At my son's wedding reception, the father of the bride took the microphone, held up my little white envelope, and said, with a wink to 300 guests, "And now let us see what the groom's family managed." People laughed. Not all of them, but enough. 90 seconds later, that same man was standing in total silence, holding a piece of paper with all the color gone out of his face. My name is Donna. I am 56 years old, and for 31 years I have run the cafeteria at Jefferson Elementary in a small town in Georgia. Yes, I am a lunch lady. I have fed roughly 9,000 children in my life, and I remember an astonishing number of their names. My husband, Tom, drove a delivery route for a bakery for 29 years. He smelled like bread and engine grease, and he was the finest man I have ever known. We had one son, Ethan. Ethan grew up in a little brick house with one bathroom, hand-me-down bicycles, and two parents who came to every single game he ever played. We could not give him much, so we gave him everything else. He became a high school math teacher. When he told us, Tom grinned for a week. He said, "Donna, we made a man who chose kids over money. We must have done something right." I need you to hold on to that, the kind of people we are, the kind of house we come from. Because almost 5 years ago, I lost Tom. Cancer. 14 months from the diagnosis to the end. And 3 years after that, my Ethan came to Sunday dinner holding hands with a girl named Madison with a ring on her finger and tears in her eyes, and I was happy in a way I had not been since Tom. Madison is a pediatric nurse. She is kind in the automatic way, the way you cannot fake. She calls me Miss Donna and hugs me on arrival and departure. I loved her by the second visit. Her parents are Richard and Celeste Whitmore, and the Whitmores, as Celeste informed me the first time we met, are simply not used to all this. By all this, I eventually understood she meant me.
Our first dinner together was at the Whitmore house. House was the wrong word. It had wings. Richard Whitmore built shopping plazas. He shook my hand like he was doing it for a camera, and within 10 minutes he had told me the price of the wine, the boat, and the kitchen renovation. Celeste gave me a tour I did not ask for, and at the end of it, in front of everyone, she said, "And what is it you do, Donna?" I said, "I manage the cafeteria at Jefferson Elementary." There was a small pause, like the record player skipped. Then Celeste smiled with her mouth only and said, "Oh, how sweet, the cafeteria lady. Madison, darling, you did not tell me the wedding would have such humble flavor." Humble flavor. I want to be honest. It stung. I drove home that night and sat in the driveway of my little brick house and had a good cry about it. But here is the thing about serving 9,000 children. You learn the difference between hungry people and mean people. And mean people do not scare me. They just tell me who they are early, which saves time. The wedding planning was theirs from the first day. Richard announced he was covering everything: the club, the band, 300 guests, and every announcement came with a price tag attached, said out loud. I offered to host the rehearsal dinner. Celeste said, "Oh, sweetheart, no, we have a caterer. You just bring yourself. We know things are tight." I was scheduled to give a toast. 2 weeks before the wedding, the toast quietly disappeared from the program. Timing issues, Celeste said. Ethan was furious. He wanted to say something. I told him, "Baby, no. You are marrying Madison, not her parents. Let them have the party." Because here is what nobody at that country club knew. For 4 years, I had been keeping a secret. Every night after my shift, every weekend, every school vacation. It lived across town, behind a chain-link fence, under a blue tarp that slowly disappeared one season at a time, and it fit inside one small white envelope.
9 years ago, Tom came home from his route, buzzing like a kid. There was a house on Cypress Street, a little 2-bedroom with a sagging porch, going to county auction. It even had a small unfinished basement under the back half of the house. The old owner had passed with no family. Tom had watched that house from his delivery truck for years. He said, "Donna, that is a good house having a bad decade. Bones like a church." We bid $88,000, which was every cent of our savings and a small loan against my pension. We got it. The plan was simple, the way Tom's plans were always simple. We fix it up slow, no debt, 1 room a year, and one day it is Ethan's. A teacher will never get rich, Tom said, but a man with no rent can afford to be good at his job. For 5 years, that house was our date night, Saturdays with sandpaper and a radio. He did the wiring, I learned tile from the library and ruined exactly 1 bathroom floor learning it. Then Tom got sick. The last time he ever stood inside that house, it was half done, studs open in the kitchen, plastic on the windows. He stood there with his oxygen tank and ran his hand along a doorframe he had hung himself. He said, "Finish her, Donna. Do not you dare sell her." And then, in hospice, 3 weeks before the end, he asked the nurse for paper. He wrote for a long time, folded it and sealed it, and on the front he wrote, "For Ethan, open on your wedding day." He handed it to me and said, "Keep this with the deed, honey. When our boy gets married, that is the gift. The house and the letter. Whoever she is, they start life with a roof nobody can take." Tom died on a Thursday in October, and that's when the lunch lady learned renovation. 4 years, every evening after the cafeteria closed, YouTube videos on a cracked phone screen, drywall in winter, painting in summer. Our old neighbor Hector helped with the plumbing and wouldn't take a dime, so he eats free at my table forever. I paid off the pension loan 2 years ago. This spring I planted azaleas by the porch, and I stood on the sidewalk, and the little house on Cypress Street stood there, paid for, shining, done. Appraised at $310,000, not that the number was the point. I put the deed, the key, and Tom's sealed letter into one white envelope, and I wrote on it, "To Ethan and Madison, from Mom and Dad."
The wedding day was beautiful. I will give the Whitmores that. It looked like a magazine. Madison was radiant. My Ethan cried at the altar, exactly like his father cried at ours. At the reception, I placed my envelope on the gift table, between boxes wrapped like small monuments, and I found my seat, which was at table 9 by the kitchen doors. The cafeteria lady seated by the kitchen, somewhere Celeste had giggled at that. I actually did not mind. The kitchen staff and I had a lovely time. Then came the toasts, and then Richard Whitmore did the thing that everyone in that room will remember for the rest of their lives. He took the microphone, buttons straining, and announced his gift. Madison, Princess, Ethan, from Celeste and me, 2 weeks in Bali, and a ceremonial check for $60,000 toward a house worthy of a Whitmore. He held the ceremonial check over his head. There was applause. A cake got wheeled somewhere. It was a show. And then, because the room was warm and the wine was open, and men like Richard cannot help themselves, he walked to the gift table. He picked up my envelope, my small white envelope. He held it up with 2 fingers, like something found under a couch cushion, and he said with a wink, And now let us see what the groom's family managed. Donna, sweetheart, if it is a gift card to the cafeteria, I am using it Monday. People laughed. Not all of them, but enough. Ethan stood up so fast his chair went over. Madison grabbed his hand, white as her dress. I did not stand up. 31 years of lunch duty teaches you to let a room be loud while you stay quiet. I just looked at Richard from table 9, and I said clearly enough to Carrie, "Go ahead and open it, Richard. It is addressed to the kids, but go ahead. I would not want you to miss it." Something in my voice moved through that room like weather. The laughing stopped. Richard smiled, a little less certain now, and tore the envelope open. He pulled out a brass key taped to a folded document. He unfolded it, still performing, and started to read out loud. Warranty deed, the property at 14 Cypress Street, conveyed in full, free of all liens, to Ethan and Madison. And then Richard Whitmore stopped talking.
The silence lasted maybe 5 seconds. At a wedding, 5 silent seconds is a year. Richard's eyes were still moving down the page. His mouth had quit. Madison spoke first. She whispered, "Daddy, what does it say?" And since Richard appeared to be out of order, I answered. I said, "It says the house is yours, sweetheart, bought and paid for. No mortgage, no rent, no conditions." I stood up then, at table 9, by the kitchen doors. I said, "Ethan, your father found it 9 years ago. We bought it at auction with everything we had. He rewired every room in it with his own hands. He meant to finish it for you." The room had gone church quiet. He did not get to, so I finished it for him. 4 years, every night after work. That is where I was, baby. All those Sundays I said I was busy. My son was crying, standing in the middle of his own wedding. And I said, "There is one more thing in the envelope, Richard, if you would be so kind." Richard, gray as his tie, reached in and took out the sealed letter. He read the front of it, and to his credit, the last piece of the salesman drained out of him right there. He said, quietly, into the microphone, "It says, 'For Ethan, open on your wedding day,' and it is—" He stopped, cleared his throat. "It is in the father's handwriting." He walked it across the room and put it in Ethan's hands like it was made of glass. Ethan opened his father's letter 4 years after the funeral in front of 300 people. He read it silently, shaking. Then he read one line of it out loud, because it turns out my Tom was funnier than all of us. It says, "Son, if a rich man is holding this letter instead of you, tell the lunch lady says hello." The room did not laugh. The room roared. Weeping and roaring at the same time, 300 people. Madison ran across the floor in her dress, not to Ethan, to me, to table 9. She put her forehead on my shoulder and sobbed, "Thank you, Miss Donna. Thank you. It is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me." And over her shoulder, I watched Celeste Whitmore staring at the ceremonial check on the bandstand, understanding in real time that she had just been outgifted by the cafeteria lady. Table 9, by the way, gave me a standing ovation, the kitchen staff first. My people.
Now, about that $60,000 ceremonial check. The one held above Richard's head in front of 300 witnesses. The money behind it never arrived. First it was, "The accountant is reissuing it." Then, "We're moving some investments, tax reasons, you understand." Then Bali became Cancun, and then Cancun became, we'll plan something once things settle. Things did not settle. 11 months after the wedding, we learned what the kids' generation calls the plot twist, and what my generation calls the truth coming home. Whitmore Development was drowning. 2 plazas sitting empty, everything mortgaged against everything else. The house with wings, the boat with the price tag, the cars, all of it borrowed feathers. Richard had stood at that wedding, mocking my envelope, waving a ceremonial check he already knew he could not cover. The bank took the plazas in the spring. The house with wings went up for sale that summer and sold for less than the rumors said. And on a rainy Tuesday in September, my telephone rang. It was Celeste. Her voice was small in a way I had never heard. She asked how I was, she asked about the school, and then she got to it. Donna, Madison says you know how to make $1 behave. Richard and I are in a rented condo, and it is temporary, of course, but the kids' house has that finished basement, and family should help family, should it not? I want you to hear what I did not do. I did not laugh, I did not bring up Table 9, or the microphone, or humble flavor. 31 years of lunch duty teaches you something else, too. Everybody comes through the line eventually. Everybody gets hungry. I said, Celeste, that house belongs to Ethan and Madison. It is their decision, and I will not make it for them, in either direction. And then I said, but if you two need a hot meal while you sort things out, my table seats 6, and Sunday dinner is at 1 o'clock. There was a long, long silence on the line, and then Celeste Whitmore, of the Whitmores, said in a voice I actually believed for the first time, "Thank you, Donna. We might just come." They came. The first Sunday was stiff as new shoes. Richard sat in Tom's old chair and did not announce the price of anything, possibly for the first time in his adult life. But my pot roast has settled harder cases than Richard Whitmore. The kids said no to the basement, gently, and I believe that was right. Madison found her parents a small apartment they could actually afford, and Richard, at 61, took a job managing properties for another man, which I am told is very good for his character. Last Thanksgiving, we all fit in the little house on Cypress Street. My daughter-in-law cooked in the kitchen Tom wired, my son carved at the table, and at the end of the meal, Celeste stood up with her glass, and her hand was not quite steady. She said, I would like to toast Donna, who gave the greatest gift I have ever seen given, and who taught me that I did not know the first thing about what wealthy looks like. I am not going to pretend everything is healed. Some things are only ever patched, but patched holds if you maintain it, any renovator will tell you. People ask me if I planned it, the envelope, the moment, letting Richard open it himself in front of everyone. No, I only planned the gift. Richard built that moment with his own hands, the way he built everything else, on borrowed confidence in front of witnesses. All I did was stay quiet at Table 9 and let a proud man read a humble envelope out loud. Tom used to say, "Do not tell people who you are, Donna. Just feed them and they will figure it out." So here is what I know after 56 years, 31 of them behind a lunch counter. The loudest gift in the room is usually a debt in a nice suit, and the smallest envelope on the table might hold 9 years of Saturdays, a dead man's wiring, 4 years of a widow's evenings, and a roof that no bank on this earth can touch.
Love does not announce its price into a microphone. Love shows up every night after work, learns tile from the library, and plants azaleas by the porch when it is done. So if they seat you by the kitchen, sit down and smile. The kitchen is where everything good comes from. If this story held you until the end, subscribe to Vermilion Veil. There is a new story every single day, and behind every veil, the truth is waiting to burn.